Pressing go live. Okay, so it takes a couple seconds, it says. Words do something more does. Oh, okay, there you go. All right.
Right.
I'm excited to have Mark Werner, who's a managing partner at Valenta. So in today's webinar, this is Valenta's Insight Series, Season 2, Episode 3. So today, we're going to be digging a little bit deeper into Mark's background, some of the interesting work that he's doing at Valenta, and then share a little bit more about data integration. And yeah, so we're going to be this will be very conversational. And so welcome to the LinkedIn Live, Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Davidson. Yeah, this is great. I'm really happy that you're kind of putting these together for Valenta and our managing partners, and I'm looking forward to having a pretty lively discussion, hopefully.
Yeah. So let's dig a little bit deeper into your background. So you've been a data integration leader. So you've been doing 25 years in the world of software architect, software development, and a good chunk of it specializing in the Salesforce platform.
Yep.
So, starting as an administrator and then working your way up to a solutions architect. And you've led multiple cloud data migrations and worked with a lot of different data warehouses. Well, what made you want to like get into data in the first place?
Well, I guess I've been into data and numbers my entire life. So like as a kid, I was, really big into baseball cards. I'm always looking at,
Mm.
baseball statistics and all that. So numbers have always been kind of a part of my life. Um, in college, I was my degree was in chemical engineering, so definitely a heavy, math focus there. And eventually kind of led into getting into my IT career, which I started almost 25 years ago. Basically, started in 1999, right around the year 2K. So my IT career got started as kind of like a help desk analyst. Basically, kind of, I had always been, really good with computers as kind of, as they were kind of starting to get, a little more implemented into the businesses. So I was always kind of a unofficial IT person, always helping people with their issues when IT resources weren't available. So eventually, I just kind of shifted my career and kind of went that way.
Hmm.
So started out in kind of just help desk, basic IT networking, but quickly kind of turned more towards the development side. I was doing some kind of website management, building out our websites, building intranet applications, all with kind of like a business focus. Really trying to, in those days, kind of optimize processes, taking kind of paper, approval processes, things like that, and automating them, and basically kind of getting things on, onto our corporate intranet and kind of building things out. I guess, it was about 15 years ago where I shifted more towards a Salesforce platform, and came on with and was kind of started as a Salesforce administrator for kind of a smaller company. Did a little bit of development there and kind of built my skills. But really just since then kind of have done, I guess it's been probably 15, 16 years that I've been kind of really focused a lot on the Salesforce platform. And that's done, I've kind of had several different roles, worked at different companies across different industries, all kind of, trying to optimize their Salesforce solutions and adding functionality, and basically porting a lot of their business processes onto the Salesforce platform. So that's, I think, the beauty of that platform is when the scalability, but the customizability, where you can kind of really incorporate your own business processes into that platform. Towards kind of the later part of my career on in the Salesforce side, I started to be involved with a lot of data migration issues. So moving from either one instance of Salesforce into another, basically taking a lot of data, processing it and preparing it and loading it into another instance. Um, when migrating to other, integrated systems with Salesforce and migrating legacy historical data from other systems as well. So that was kind of like the kickstart for me to get into kind of the data world. So I was working a lot with data, moving them from one system to another. I think in my early days, it was a lot of, I didn't have a lot of the tools that are available today. So I was doing a lot of it using, basic SQL queries and a lot of moving files from place to place. Um, Over the last few years, I've had the opportunity to start working with data warehouses and starting to pull data from systems, Salesforce being, a big one of them, but other systems, ERP systems, SAP, marketing systems, billing systems, and basically building out that data warehouse that can basically pull all of your sources and your data together. And really that's what my focus over the past few years is kind of building those and optimizing those pipelines to help companies bring their data um, together into one platform to make it easier to kind of dig in and start to kind of really analyze what you have.
Interesting. So clearly you've been technical from an early age. You're always
Yeah.
so naturally you fell into the guy that's always solving problems, and you saw a need, you saw that Salesforce is growing and there's so large, these large data sets. So you saw that the market and the industry is leading towards like, hey, there's a lot of these data warehouses and there's a lot of old data. So you're able to solve for a lot of problems. And it's clear that data is not going anywhere, right? If
Oh
anything,
yeah,
every year there's
definitely.
more and more data, it sounds like.
Yo, yeah. I mean, that is the key. I think really the key to anything that you're trying to do, as a business. To everyone, the big kind of the buzzword is kind of data driven decision making, and really what that is kind of making decisions to kind of steer your business based on your historical data, your sales data, your marketing data, as well as data from other sources. And really what I've worked on and what Valenta is very good at is basically pulling all those disparate data sources together to prepare them for the analytics and the decisions that you ultimately want to make. I mean, there's a couple of you know kind of buzzwords sayings that are kind of out there, and the one that kind of was there is there's a lot of companies now are data rich, but they're information poor. And really what that means is they have they have all of these different systems and they're collecting all these points of data, and there's a struggle to pull those into kind of a meaningful centralized location and then gain meaningful insights from that. So you can have all of this data piled up from website traffic, industrial data from kind of your plants, but if you don't have a strategy to get that into kind of a platform and then kind of build the reports and dashboards off of that, it's going to be a struggle. But the good news is I think that the data is there. Most companies at this point have lots and lots of data. It's just a matter of figuring out how to manage it and curate it to get real meaningful and strategic decisions from it.
Hmm. So from your work and working for a lot of pretty well-known organizations and just in general, are you noticing that like with the legacy data, I'm sure there's a lot of folks from the old from that implemented these systems, and then there's a lot of newer systems coming out, right? So how do you go about knowing what technologies it just seems like there's so many, almost like the paradox of choice. There's just so many out there right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really is going to depend. It's also going to depend upon the company itself. So obviously with data, like it's necessary for all businesses of all sizes. So I've worked a lot with large enterprise clients, which have a lot more structure in place already. But then there, also work with some smaller businesses that may have a couple of different systems, but really haven't started to work with kind of pulling that together into a data warehouse. So I think from a Valenta perspective, we're able to kind of do both, kind of do both sides of that. So we have a lot of experience with across a lot of the different tools. So we're able to work with companies with their existing tech stack. So if they already have, a Snowhouse data warehouse and they're using Power BI or using Tableau, we can help and work within the existing structure that they have. But for newer companies that don't have anything in place, there's a couple of things that we can do. Is we can help with the decision making and their platform, determining what they want to go with. But we also, for even the smaller companies, Valenta offers kind of a data analytics as a service. So we have the way, offer the ability to kind of leverage what we've built and use our infrastructure to generate use your data to generate insights for your business.
Hmm. So when will a client, around what revenue, or when should they start thinking to have more of a cohesive data strategy, right? Is it when they're 10 million, 30 million? What would be like some warning signs that it's like, okay, maybe I should talk to Mark?
I mean, I don't know if there's a set number. I mean, probably the earlier you start, the better. At least getting, implementing some sort of reporting, and generally that happens now. So with a lot of systems that smaller companies are using, they have their own. Most of them have their own reporting in place. So, for instance, if you have like you're a small company, not a lot of revenue yet, but you do have a CRM system. So you have a system to capture your customer information. You have a system to capture your billing information, whether that's Quicken Books or any type of ERP or more sophisticated solution. Most of those tools have kind of basic reporting that you can do on your own data, and I definitely would recommend leveraging that as much as possible, like at any point. Like as soon as you have a system collecting data, use the built-in reporting to kind of help to understand that. And we can help there as well. So a lot of companies, especially start young, smaller, younger companies have to move to a CRM system. Like they're on QuickBooks and it's not sophisticated enough for them, so they want to move to an ERP system like Acumatica or a CRM system like Salesforce or Zoho or something like that. So I guess the where so obviously we can help with that decision making process as well. But from the data side, where we will really come into play is when you have multiple of these systems together and you have to start basically building reports across those systems. So if you have an ERP system, you have a CRM system, you have a marketing system that's collecting information from your website, you'll have reporting on each of those different systems, but you may struggle to basically have an overall view of all your data points across your business. And that's kind of generally described as having kind of data silos,
Mm.
where you have separate systems in place, but they are all only reporting on the information that's in that particular system. And that's where definitely one of the strong points that Valenta has done, and what I've kind of done in the past, is kind of build out that central data repository that pulls all of the data from all of these different systems, and then you can start to kind of report across everything together, so you get more of a view of your customer. I think the one kind of gold standard that's kind of thrown out there is having that 360-degree view of your customer. So if you have, you see their behavior on your website, you have that information. You have, their customer information you have in your CRM system. You have information from them on their billing system. Sometimes it's definitely a challenge to start to report on all of that to kind of understand, get a better idea of, what they're doing at all parts of their, customer lifecycle.
Hmm. So it sounds like like when you have a lot of silos, it can be like when the information doesn't talk, there's just a lot of reports. So it sounds like you're able to help automate and be able to connect the dots a little bit more. And is there a specific, like I know we have a partnership with Rockwell Automation. Can you share a little bit more about how they're able to help potentially?
Yeah, so Rockwell Automation, and they'll really be kind of be focused on the manufacturing industry, which is fine. As I mentioned, kind of my chemical engineering background, like I definitely have a background in that space. But they have a couple different products. One of them is called Data Mosaic, which basically provides that kind of that data centralized data hub for you. The one good thing about the you know the Rockwell Automation piece is they are focused a lot on the industrial data, the data at the plant, sensor data from kind of your machinery on the plant floor. So they're pulling a lot of that data in, but then they also within their data hub that they have built, they can pull in your ERP system data, your CRM system data, so you can start to pull in together the industrial data from the floor with the business operational data from kind of the business side. And that's, I think, for me, that's a completely, like, in all of the most of my experience in kind of in my IT career, even though I have worked with several manufacturing firms, I had always been on kind of the back office, the business side of things.
Hmm.
So working on their ERP data, their CRM data, really the data around the customer and the kind of the business side of things. What was great with working with Rockwell was being kind of re-exposed to that kind of plant sensor data, like the real industrial data. Last month I was at a workshop there where we got to really kind of play around with some of the data, and it really kind of took me back to my college days where I was doing all these in the chemical engineering. I'm always working on kind of calculations and the temperature data, the pressure data, sensor data, like all of that type of data. But it's been since I've kind of moved into my professional career, it's been more on the business side. I hadn't had much exposure to that side of it, so it was great to see how those different data sets can be merged together to kind of start looking at insights, and you can start kind of building out your supply chain and your inventory levels, and you can base it off of real data that's coming out of your plant. So definitely cool to see that, and looking forward to being able to kind of work on that and kind of getting back to my roots with that kind of that chemical engineering background.
Hmm. We have a question actually. Felicia Romano says, are you building the framework first? What do you want to know at a glance that's derived from multiple data silos?
Really, I think um, the idea, what we would think is, like, if we were going to be going with an engagement, it would be understanding all of the systems that are in place at that time. So understanding, what CRM system you have, if any, your piece, and understanding what your systems are. And then once you get into kind of your data warehouse, you can really start to, there's a couple different options based on, your size. And then also like the cloud platforms that are available too. So, you have your AWS, you have Google, you have your Azure for IBM. So a couple different ultimate platforms there. A lot of that decision will come on based on what you have in place today, if anything. So if you have an AWS instance, then it would make sense to kind of lean towards that and kind of build through there. If you're a Microsoft shop, then you kind of go through Azure, and Power BI is your BI tool. But a lot of it is going to be based on an analysis of what you have in place today, and then go from there. And then obviously, if you're kind of relatively new and don't have a lot of systems in place, you can kind of work, we can work with you to kind of, leverage some of the things that we've have built out. And again, we're, Valenta as a whole, we tend to be kind of technology agnostic. So we're willing to and able to work with the clients to find whatever, back end system and framework can, work best for the customer.
Cool. Thanks, Mark. And I know there's a trend with the ESG, the environmental, social, and governance initiatives, how data can play a role in data integration. Can you share a little bit more about what you're seeing in the trends in terms of leveraging data to support the ESG goals?
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's another area that's kind of taking me back, too early in my career. Before I got into IT, I was actually an environmental engineer, so I did a lot of working for state government, doing kind of like permit work around air pollution. So I definitely have kind of a history with kind of, working with monitoring and managing, greenhouse gases. So obviously ESG and sustainability is a big focus kind of moving forward, with, climate change and things like that. So a big push for a lot of companies is kind of ultimately to kind of reducing their carbon footprint, to get to ultimately net zero emissions. And there's a lot of kind of greenhouse gas tracking that's a part of that. Valenta has a partnership. It's our kind of sister company, which is called SustainX, which is it's two things. It is a platform which allows you to monitor and report on your greenhouse gas emissions and really help you drive your way to kind of net zero. But the other big piece of their platform is that we offer sustainability and ESG consulting on top of that. So we're more than just kind of a data platform. We offer the consulting to kind of help you. And I think more and more companies are kind of, pushing to that. And there's more and more government regulations globally that are coming, but a lot of companies are seeing a push from, their supply, their customers, and we're seeing it kind of being pushed down the supply chain where the larger companies are requiring it from, the supply chains. Like if you want to supply to, like the Walmarts, the bigger companies, you're going to have to be monitoring, your greenhouse gas and pushing towards an ESG solution. And that's what, Valenta SustainX does. Like we have a solution to help you out, to help start collecting and monitoring and reporting on your existing data. But we also, tying in with Valenta, we have a way to automate that and basically pull it out of your systems and connect and integrate with, the SustainX platform. So I think it really, it's, it's a large, process to basically, it's kind of, helping you understand your data and drive, your kind of strategic decisions. This is more kind of like from that sustainability side and kind of helping kind of on the environmental awareness.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I love how it's all tying in nicely with your background with industrial engineering and then the environmental engineering. It sounds like Valenta is a good combination where you get to work on a lot of things you're passionate about, but then also marry it with your extensive background with like the integrations and data governance. Um, Pivoting a little bit, but kind of related, why did you decide to join Valenta? I'm sure there's a lot of other consulting firms out there, right? What made you choose Valenta over some of the other ones?
Yeah, I mean, since I've been working in Salesforce, I've thought a lot about, doing consulting work, and it's kind of, I've had discussions with, consulting firms, specifically around Salesforce. Never, for whatever reason, things never really worked out, but I've always, pretty much in all of my roles within Salesforce, I've had a consulting partner that I've been working with, and had that relationship, and basically kind of leverage those to kind of build out and work on, a lot of the projects that I've been working on. So kind of the consulting business has always something that I've been thinking about, and obviously thought about kind of going on my own, because I definitely like helping the smaller customers, build up, their processes, and especially when, they don't have a lot of the resources that, the larger companies have been. So most of my Salesforce work, it's been a mix of both, but they've been kind of established companies that had established Salesforce platforms, and they had resources to bring in consulting help. So Valenta was good because I definitely had the background, one technically, but also kind of being on the other side of the fence from kind of the consulting. I've kind of been that customer, so I kind of have, a unique lens to see it kind of from both sides. To be able to kind of understand what the customer is looking for, but then also have the access to all of the, the resources that can help, build out these solutions. And I think that's what's great, about Valenta, as opposed to kind of going out and doing it on my own, is just, the amount of resources and the assistance that's available, um, to that. So for me, kind of leveraging the Valenta platform and all of the kind of their back office, services they provide, it kind of made it, an easier transition for me to kind of, do a lot of the, the consulting work, because ultimately what I'm interested in is I want to solve problems. So I want to, take a look at, what the customer's doing, what they have in place, what they don't have in place, and then work collaboratively with, the customer and our Valenta resources to basically solve the problem and come up with the best solution, at a price point that some of these kind of smaller companies are going to be able to handle.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's a good point. I can't imagine having without the back office, and like Valenta provides a lot of resources, right? I can't imagine starting from scratch and having to like figure out all that stuff by
Yeah,
yourself.
like trying to figure out, okay, all right, I got a customer, I want to help them out. Like I'm worried about, okay, I want to figure out, okay, they're going to use Salesforce. Okay, we got to build this out. We're going to build out the reporting. We want to build that out. I don't want to be worried about, okay, all right, well, I have to send out this invoice and manage, payments, and, okay, they're 90 days late. What do I do now?
Hmm.
All of that, like overhead, is it's the things that I don't necessarily want to focus a lot of time on. So it definitely, helps that kind of Valenta has that kind of back office structure built in.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. There's a lot more to entrepreneurship that meets the eye, right? It's just a lot of things we don't think about.
Yeah.
Um, so Felicia has another question. Some customers do not understand how much they can do with Salesforce. Like, do you help them find value in the solutions they already have?
Yeah, I think what I've done in my past is a lot of the Salesforce projects that I've worked on have been basically taking a look at what has been built out currently and helping to, either refocus, rebuild, optimize, whatever. Basically taking a look at what's there and determining ways to optimize or improve, what's been built out. A lot of one of the the beauties of Salesforce, and then also kind of can be a downside, is Salesforce. You have the ability to do any type of customization that you want, you can think of. It's an extremely open, platform, and definitely earlier on, they say, 10 years ago or so, there was more of a push for a lot of customization, heavy coding to customize, and really basically build out and customize the solution as you need it. What I've seen and what I've done working with a lot of projects that I've been on has been to kind of de-customize a lot of that and start to move back to more of the standard Salesforce functionality, and
Mm,
going away from a lot of kind of the heavy, custom coding that's been out there. Because
mm,
I think one of the big things that you've seen with organizations that have a lot of heavy customization is it makes integrating with other systems a lot more challenging. So the more away from the standard Salesforce functionality and objects you get, the more complex your integrations become. So a lot of what I've worked on in the past is kind of scaling back and moving away from code and building out declarative, they call it clicks in Salesforce. And that's kind of where my expertise is. So I have a bit of a background in Salesforce development and software development, but I'm not a coder. Like I can understand code and I can write some code if it's needed, but I like to use as much as the out of the box declarative tools as possible. So especially on the Salesforce side, there are tools with flow and um, workflow rules. There's a lot of things internal that come with Salesforce that you can build things declaratively without having to write custom code. And a lot of the Salesforce instances I'm going has been kind of steering people to that more standardized. Obviously every business needs to customize and there will be customizations that are needed, and you should do that, but trying to do that with the existing tools as much as possible is definitely what I've seen is the way to go. And it's the way. So also what we would kind of work on with Valenta is new customers that are standing up, they're moving into Salesforce for the first time, and obviously that would be the approach that we would take as well. Is okay, we're going to understand your business processes, we'll port as many of these into kind of the Salesforce platform as we can, but our focus is going to use the tools, the automation tools within Salesforce without having to resort to the heavy custom coding.
Hmm. Um, she said, yeah. So Felicia agreed, and she also said, uh, "Is Felicia a good friend of yours?" Or
No,
oh,
no,
so, okay. Um, just using case perspectives, managing CRM campaigns, opportunities, cases, visibility, troubleshooting, accountability. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think we've worked with all of that, and and it's definitely like, so I guess one example that I had from from the past where there was a struggle is I worked for a company and they actually went through uh, their business was sold off. So it was a spinoff, and the parent company had used Salesforce. And as part of the process, when they basically spun that company off, is they wanted to save some money on their Salesforce implementation, so they went with a lower version of Salesforce. Basically, they was basically just kind of platform licenses. So basically, what they did is they rebuilt their entire Salesforce org with custom objects, which worked for them, and it was affordable. But when they went to integrate with other systems, and 5 years down the road, it didn't work because they like basically the custom solution they built out just wasn't feasible anymore. And that was part of what I was on to do, is kind of build out their system with the custom, the standard objects and tools. And that's also one of the big data migration projects that I worked on as well, is to basically pull all the data from their old Salesforce org and like transform it for the new standard objects and kind of go from there. But as part of that, once you start going down the over customization road, you start to Service Cloud with your cases becomes a little more difficult to manage. Marketing Cloud, being able to kind of have your marketing functions there. All of these things are all within the Salesforce platform, but they're all kind of unique modules. And anytime you dip too far away from kind of standard and over customize it, it just makes the integration between those modules more and more complex.
So yeah, so what other trends are you seeing? I mean, that's a good insight, right, into the over customization. I could see how, especially how if it's super, then it's just cumbersome or yeah, it overcomplicates. What other trends are you noticing, having done this work for, 25 years now?
On the Salesforce side, I think one of the things that we're seeing is more and more reliance on data cloud, which is it's the Salesforce offering, which basically allows what it's ultimately going to help you enable your AI solutions. So Salesforce has an AI platform called Einstein. So data cloud and Einstein and reliance on more of the data and starting to kind of do some of that AI and analytics of that data is definitely where things are going. And then I think part of what data cloud and Einstein can do, it starts to help facilitate kind of the bringing in data from outside sources. So it's more than just reporting on the Salesforce data. And I think that's really the kind of overall trend is more towards these centralized hubs for data, data warehouses. I mean, data warehouses have been around for a long time as well, but there's definitely more and more of a push to to get to that, especially as the demand for AI is coming as well. Because I think as we've talked on a couple of the of your the Valenta series, the first step in any AI initiative is getting your data in order, and whether that's a central location in a warehouse, or having systems in place. And again, it can be you can have some something built on AWS, you can have Snowflake, data cloud, all these systems kind of interact and integrate. But it's definitely kind of the trend is moving towards that and kind of modernizing your stack. And I think you saw in the comments about Tableau as well. And I think Tableau integrates with the data cloud and that as well. And I think Salesforce definitely they're evolving their data offering and definitely putting a lot of their focus there. Um, and 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 I think the different at least from the Salesforce side, they're starting to build more of a that large platform that can kind of handle a lot of these other functions as well. And I think you're seeing that with all your players, kind of your Snowflake, Salesforce, Azure. They have kind of the same thing with their Fabric product. So it's a lot of these larger platforms that are starting to kind of try to take on a lot of different functionality and building in those kind of AI and deeper analytics pieces. And again, I think it kind of then kind of lends to what platform you ultimately look at depends on really what you have in place today. So I think a lot of the decision based on kind of what platforms you have. So if you are a Salesforce customer and you have heavy Salesforce usage, looking at data cloud is something it's definitely something that we would look at as well for you. But then again, there's close integrations with Snowflake, with AWS. So there's a lot of different options that you can go on, and ultimately whatever framework platform you come up decide on, I think in a lot of ways there are no wrong answers, but what we at Valenta would do, kind of work with you to help you kind of understand what your decision making would be, so that you feel comfortable with kind of ultimately where which direction you would go. And obviously we would have our recommendations as well.
Yes, it sounds like it's less. Oh, okay. Felicia has another question. Clean data is top priority. Visibility is essential, but what do you need to know? What automation is essential to ensure that you have access to updated data?
Well, the clean data is obviously the biggest thing, and that can generally, like what I've seen in some of the things that I've projects I've worked on is a lot of times when companies, management, they get in and they say, okay, we want to implement this data warehouse and I want to start reporting on it, I want to start making decisions on it. You can put the framework in place, but you have to take the steps to review and understand your data and make sure that you trust the data that's flowing through your systems. Because I think a lot of customers, a lot of companies I work for, they have, so there are generally a lot of, so there are systems that have data and pull data, and there's definitely some reporting, but there's also a lot of just areas in the company where you'll have power users that are taking extracts of data and building out models, building out reports within like Excel or Access or some of these smaller tools, which contributes to the kind of the data silos. That's definitely one of the things that you have to do when kind of building out that data warehouse is one you ultimately want to replace these kind of siloed applications, but you also have to do it in a way so that the data is trusted. So for instance, management's kind of been working, with the finance team on this, financial model that's built on in Excel. So they pull a data set from, whichever, backend system they have, and they build out the numbers in Excel. You can then port all of that into, a data warehouse, integrate it in through together, and then start to generate those reports again. But if they don't match the information and the data that is showing in the Excel reports, the management team's not going to trust it. So that's going to be kind of your first step, is to go back and look at the data that's in your systems, and as you integrate it and transform it into your data warehouse and prepare it for your downstream analytics, you want to make sure that you trust the data that's coming out of it, it's clean. You're not getting disparate data from different systems. So for instance, different systems may treat fields such as the date field different. So you need to make sure that you kind of marry those together and transform them so that you're getting a single piece of data that represents everything across your customer, your company. Customer names are the same thing. There's a lot of kind of cleanup and preparing and understanding your data at the source that you need to go through and really finally document as much as you can but before, and prepare it before you integrate it, then ultimately kind of store it in a warehouse, and then prepare and model it for further analytics.
Okay.
So hopefully
Eh,
that answered the question.
Yeah, that was helpful. She asked, what does Valenta do to ensure the data is clean before work begins? Is it an SOP or checklist? Excel is great but cumbersome. What do you use to integrate these reports?
Yeah, I mean, I think and I think on kind of a bit of a segue for one of your, I think you have another call later today with Nate Morris, who leads the data team there. So yeah, I think he could obviously speak to that a little bit better. But yeah, I mean, I think what I've done in the past is doing, reviewing a lot of data in spreadsheets and just understanding the data. And then also, once you get the data into, your warehouse and modeling it, having reports and queries run, and basically compare them directly against kind of the other source systems that you have out there. So if you have an Excel workbook that's modeling data, basically you want to try to implement the same calculations and make sure that you're getting that to the same results. But as far as our specific process, I think Nate on your next call will be able to really dig into a lot of what that process is.
Okay. And then she asked, is it agile or Scrum is our methodology that we use?
Um, I know that I've worked. Yeah, I've worked specifically agile in most of the projects that I've worked with Um, I believe that I'm not sure if Valenta works in that fashion. I believe they do, but I'm not sure at this point. And again, that's probably another question for Nate as well. But yeah, I mean, my background is I'm a Scrum Master and Agile product owner, so I
Yeah.
it's definitely my background.
Yeah, and just for context, both Mark and I are relatively new to Valenta, so we're still trying to, it's like drinking out of a fire hose. Sometimes it feels like, just
Yeah,
for context. Okay, this has been very helpful. So you're noticing the trends, and data cloud is a big. Okay, she said thank you. So it sounds like the integrations, Salesforce as a whole is building out deeper analytics. Obviously, Einstein and AI, everyone's trying to figure out how to leverage Einstein. But if the data is not clean, then obviously, then like you said, the management doesn't trust that data, right?
right. Yep.
So um I mean, obviously, people want to be proactive, but it seems like most companies are being reactive. Like, how does someone have a more proactive approach with their data versus like whenever there's a huge issue, then people are more likely to look deeper into that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you definitely have to kind of sell this message to kind of management. So that has to be a part of the conversation. So it needs to be understood that there is going to be a data cleansing exercise. So one of the big projects that I've had with the data warehouse that we had is as we were going, and we kind of knew it was a problem all along, but as we started to pull the data in and start to report on it, we had a lot of duplicate data within the CRM system. So again, like we talked about, when you start to pull in data from different systems, and we were actually, a lot of companies will um, use Salesforce as sometimes a pseudo data warehouse.
Mm.
So since it's the sales teams are doing that, they'll pull information directly into Salesforce. So some teams can build on some of that data or have some visibility to some of that data in one place. So obviously, Salesforce is not a data warehouse. So ultimately, that's what we did, is kind of build a warehouse to have a cleaner pipeline for this data. But since you're pulling in data from customer data from different sources, and if you don't have a lot of checkpoints in place, you can end up with a lot of duplicate data within your system. So we would have customer data that we really needed to clean up because duplicates were a big problem. Luckily, we were able to have on that particular project the management buy-in to do this. So actually, what we did is we actually had a war room set up where there were 10 to 15 people, and it was a week of time where basically everybody went into the systems and were deleting duplicate records. So we had a mechanism in place to define um, what was the main master record, and then we would delete the other ones. Now, once we did that in place, we were able to leverage the Salesforce duplication rules and set it up so that moving forward we were protected, so we wouldn't have duplicate records created after that, and it wouldn't be an ongoing problem. But where we were at that particular time, we needed to do that manual exercise in order to take advantage of some of the Salesforce capabilities, but then also knowing that our data is clean and um, can be trusted on the back end side when we start to build out our reports and dashboards. And
Mm.
I think you're going to see, well, one, you're going to see that in some systems, there's going to be duplication that you may have to deal with. But then also, as you integrate the systems together, you need to make sure that you're careful with your transformation so that you're matching up and marrying the records together. So again, you don't manually create, or you don't end up with duplications on your warehouse side. So there's got to be care to understand the source data from all your sources and how all of that kind of joins and marries together, and then make sure that there's some kind of governance and monitoring of that, what you put into the warehouse, so that you're not kind of introducing those duplicates based on the integrations you're doing.
Hmm. So, Mark, would you also help with the data governance side of things as well?
Yeah, that's definitely part of Valenta's package is kind of that data governance, and that's definitely stuff that I've done in my roles as well. And that's really a key to any platform, any data strategy that you're going to have is understanding your data and then having that governance strategy to manage and optimize the flow of that data from the separate systems into your warehouse and then your downstream reporting and analytics.
Um, she asked, "Where's the data?" Oh, she said exactly, and then where's the data coming from? Is it automation or is it manual and or manual entries?
It will be, I mean, obviously it can be a combination of both. I mean, we prefer to have, I mean, I think for manual entries, I think that could probably end up being in your source system. So your CRM, your ERP. You want to try to keep your manual entries into those core systems, and then you can build pipelines to to fill into your data warehouse. And there's a lot of options there as well. So I mean, you can go like the heavy code route and kind of use API development in order to kind of build those pipelines. Or there's also that's one of the other areas where Valenta could come into play with UiPath and our software robots. We can kind of automate there with a less lower code requirements there, and also a lot of there are a lot of tools that are out there that kind of basically provide those pipelines for you. So there are tools that you can buy that have standard connectors for your the main systems that are out there. That can basically you kind of point them to your system, and then you can kind of it facilitate the building of those pipelines to kind of ultimately flow into your warehouse. So I think really it's going to be a case by case basis. Whatever systems you have in place, the more standard the easier, the more solutions that are available. But if you have more kind of homegrown or smaller systems, we have the capabilities to connect via API calls to do that. And also we can look at leveraging the software robots from UiPath as well. So we have a lot of different options that are kind of available to kind of build out those pipelines. And we would take a look at what the company has in place, and basically make a determination based off of that.
Awesome, Mark. So we went over a lot of different things today. Oh, she said being able to manage the pipelines at the entry point so that you don't, so that there's not a lot of duplications.
Yeah, and I definitely have no like I've worked with tools that definitely that can manage that as well. This definitely would be a really good question for Nate, because I know he does this day in day out. He's totally in tune to exactly what tools we would have, and could speak more specifically about those.
Okay. Cool. Well, a lot of good conversations today. Clearly, you have an extensive background, and it parlays nicely. And you working with chemical manufacturing organizations. Is there a company? What is the company sizes that you can work with? Is it across the whole range? What would be a good? Oh, I should reach out to Mark.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really any size. I mean, I think a lot of, and especially recently, a lot of my direct experience has been with the enterprise clients. So I definitely understand the challenges, and how to work within the enterprise environment. But also a lot of those companies have the resources to work with some of the larger players, which I think we completely understand. And it's not that Valenta can't do that, and we can and are willing to. But I think a lot of these companies already have these partnerships in place. So, I mean, I think probably the small to mid-sized companies, even as small as like 10 employees to like, 200, 500 employees, we can work with all of those and we can provide all of the services that the larger players provide, but obviously we'll come at a smaller price point. For me, particularly, I enjoy working with the smaller customers and helping to kind of build and grow their business. So I think they can see a lot more impact from kind of the smaller things that we're able to put into place. But mid-sized companies as well, and I think the mid-sized companies, I think, is where I think we can really have a lot of value with the integration, because I think those are the groups that are going to have a lot of the data silos to worry about, because those companies are well established. They have CRM and ERP systems, and they have reporting against those systems. But when they start to kind of go and integrate those systems together and basically report on that 360-degree view of their customers, that's where the challenges start to come in, and I think that's where we're positioned to help the most.
Awesome. Yeah, clearly you're passionate about solving problems. It's clear that you're a trusted advisor. It seems like you take a very like objective slash like vendor agnostic, and you really want to understand what the problems are before offering any solutions. Like you're very consultative, and it's clear in like the thoughtfulness of your approach, and like you really genuinely want to help and solve problems. So yeah, thank you so much, Mark. Appreciate having you just share your insights, and it sounds like you're always adding value to your customers and solving a lot of problems. Any last minute words?
No, not really. Dave said, thanks for hosting this. Thanks for feeding up the questions. It's definitely like it definitely sparks thoughts within my own head as we're kind of going through this and kind of working through, and it's great to kind of reflect back on some of the things I work on, and recall how try to understand how they can be used to help customers moving forward. So yeah, this has been great, and thanks for hosting.
Yeah, and I know Felicia says she wants to join other ones and always be learn. She said, let me know when you have another event. Always love these conversations. Always be learning.
Yes, absolutely. And that's actually the best part of this. Um, I have experience on some data platforms, but I haven't touched them all, and I'm continuing to learn as well. So, I'm working towards my data cloud for Salesforce certification. We have a partnership with Domo, which is another project that I'll be learning on. The Rockwell automation that I mentioned earlier in their platform, learning that. UiPath. So it's a never ending path of learning here. So definitely encourage that as much as possible.
Yeah, and oh, Nate chimed in as well. Yeah, he said to answer Felicia's question, hey, 3 o'clock we're doing, so Nate will be on. So if you
Good.
guys could make it in pretty much 2 hours, we'll be having another managing partner, Nathan Morris, who's also the head of analytics here. So he'll be elaborating a little bit more on a nice segue into what Mark is talking about, right, as well, because we all work together very closely on the Domo side, and he answered saying, we use the Scrum methodology,
Okay.
but we also try to automate as much as possible. And then, JS said, thanks, great insights. And Felicia said, thank you, Nate, for confirming the methodologies. Effective teamwork makes the dream work.
Yeah, that's good. And thanks, Nate. I didn't mean to like throw things your way without discussing it with you first. But yeah, Nate and I have we've had several conversations, and our backgrounds are really similar. So and he's really strong on the data side, and leads all of our data projects here at Valenta, and he's a great resource. And like I said, he has that session coming up, and I definitely recommend sitting in on that, because Nate is very knowledgeable. So it'll be a good session.
Yeah, just a quick sneak peek. So Nate's background is he did a lot with Baker Tilly, and we're in a lot of discussions with accounting firms, with pretty large size accounting firms, and just to see their eyes light up when he shows like what we can do from a automation standpoint and data analytics standpoint, it's pretty exciting. So that's going to be a good one. So yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. We're always, we're growing this. So if there's any feedback that you have, please reach out to Mark and I, and then yeah, we'll be more than glad to answer your questions. And yep, stay tuned for additional Valenta Insight series. Thanks everyone.
All right. Thanks, everyone.